Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights On Demand. It is always a blast hanging with Tim Montana, but especially so when we are celebrating the release of his brand new album, Savage. This conversation first aired on Friday, July 12th. You're going to enjoy this one. Man, I have been looking forward to tonight's hang for quite a while. If you've listened to the show over the last several months, you know how big of a fan everyone at Loudwire is of Tim Montana. Last year, we first talked to him the night of the release of his song "Devil You Know," and ever since then, he's become a good friend of the show. And we've been counting down the days to the release of his new record, Savage. And here we are. Savage is officially out, and hanging with us tonight to help us celebrate is the man himself, Tim. As always, man, thank you so much for hanging with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. Love the Loudwire family.
So, you were one of our first guests of 2024 back in January. And at that point, I think you had posted some videos on social media about being in the studio. You knew an album was coming. There weren't any details out or anything like that. So how's it feel to be at this point? The record is wrapped up. The world is listening to it right now.
It feels great. It was, I won't say it was a rush process, but it was a fast process. As soon as Devil You Know started hitting, we just went and chased that. And we did it pretty quick over the holidays and put the finishing touches on it in January. And I'm stoked, man. We had a blast. We wrote some of it up here in Wise River and then some of it in Nashville, and just had a great time writing and recording this.
So when you wrote Devil You Know, when you released that, did you not necessarily have an intention of doing an album?
It was part of an EP that was like this weird thing we were doing. I don't even know what genre the EP was. We had like a hard rock song and then kind of a Western murder song. We just had this like weird artistic 5-song deal, and then everybody got their hands on Devil You Know, and they're like, "That there's something there. Go chase that." And I'm like, "Okay, I can do that all day. Why didn't you say so?" So that's what we went and did. We went and wrote Savage all day.
Yeah, that's easy, man. So, and listen, I know a lot of people like to talk about how you're bringing a bit of, your country influence and country background into this album, but I gotta say, to my ears, there's not a whole lot of that there. I mean, if you really want to kind of nitpick, you can pull some stuff out, but more than anything, I hear your love of grunge, your appreciation of, early 2000s rock, some of the classics, that sort of thing. That I feel like that comes through every single track.
Yeah. I think if a person that didn't know me, my history, didn't see what I look like where I live and listen to it, they wouldn't be pulling any of those country things at all. Because again, I was pretty burned out of that scene and feeling like an alien in that town for a long time. And when I, turned in Devil You Know, like I said, everyone's like, "Dude, do more of that." And I'm like, "Really? I could have been doing this 10 years ago. This is my shit. Like, let's go." I was just playing the game. So
how did we've talked to you about your story and just I mean, your incredible story, and people can hear that at loudwire.com. But how did you end up sort of in the country world? You just said you did that for 10 years, started to kind of feel like an alien. But how did you in the very beginning kind of end up there? Because you've got this love of bands like Guns N' Roses, Alice in Chains, and then you end up in Nashville. You start songwriting, you start making music. How did that all happen?
Yeah, it all came about in Los Angeles. I was going to Musicians Institute, and they do live playing workshops where they bring in badass guitar players and musicians. And one day I walk in and there's a cardboard cutout of this guy named Johnny Highland, and he's legally blind. My brother's legally blind. I was like, "Who's this guy?" And I went and saw him play the Telecaster. And this dude's like as fast or faster than Eddie Van Halen, but no distortion. And I'm like, how is that possible? Clearly this dude's like sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads. Like, what's going on? And he said, "Come on out to Nashville and I'll teach you how to play guitar like that." And by God, I moved there, and it turns out I still can't play guitar like that. And that was the guy that produced my first record that got me on the Late Show with David Letterman. But I mean, if you go back to those records, I never really played that corporate country game. It was never for me. It was like Butte America was like pretty rock, and Johnny Highland's just shredding these wicked. If you go listen to that album, it was like 07 or 08. Like, it's just guitar fest. And it was just Johnny just going a million miles an hour up and down the neck. And it got us on the Late Show. So I just kind of dug in Nashville for a while, chasing this kind of country rock, thing. And and then of course, the minute I move out, I turn in my hard rock song and it blows up. So I'm like, wow,
that's right, man.
Move back to rural Montana. Now it's funny. I tell people, I'm like, I get to be the Dark Prince from rural Montana. My mom is pissed.
Well, that's great, man. Well, yeah, and listen, it's not like you've drawn a hard line in the sand between rock and country or anything like that. I know you're happy and excited to have Savage out, but your producer, he works with a ton of country artists, you know, and has his hands all over this album. You co-write with some incredible country songwriters, and so there's still, you know, I know there's still a bit of a love for that world, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Our mutual buddy, Eric Dillon, and my record producer, Michael Wilshire. But like, you got to find the guys that are rockers. And there's a lot of them, including Nathan Barlow that wrote Savage with me and Micah. You know, he's Keith Urban's lead guitar player, but he also plays in Luna Halo, the rock band. And he's got crazy tattoos. And like, there's rockers in Nashville. You just got to look for them, right? And these guys are right. Paying their bills with country, but they're going home and headbanging to rock and roll. And that's, you know, so you just got to seek these guys out. And I'll say again, as much as I kind of, you know, talk about Nashville, my time there, I met some great folks there, and I learned how to write songs. And the songwriting community there is second to none. Like, ain't nobody out writing those guys in Nashville. And I got my butt kicked by those dudes, and I learned a ton. And, you know, very fortunate for that time. And my greatest moment was sitting in a songwriter's room with Chris Stapleton and Billy Gibbons. And I was like, how did I get here? This is really weird. And it was a great ride. So.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, man. And I mean, listen, you've always been very open about your background, and you're very grateful for your background. And that's not just growing up in Montana or going to LA. It's your time in Nashville. It's your time now back in Montana. And I think all that comes together, right? It all leads to what we have today, this new album, Savage.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you know, like, did you change anything? I'm like, I don't think so. I got to learn everything. And if this stuff would have started happening when I was 25, I probably would have messed it up and partied myself to death. And so now here I am with kids and a good head on my shoulders. And I learned a lot over the years and absorbed as much knowledge as I could. And we're ready to launch this freaking trailer hood to the moon, baby. Let's go.
That's right, man. So one thing I find interesting on this album, and maybe I'm missing it, and if I'm missing it, you know, you'll correct me, but there seems to be a lack of special guests. And that kind of stands out to me because it's a big thing today, and there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's fun to see artists collaborating with other artists, and, you know, you see your favorite singer pop up on another band's song or something like that. But for your rock debut, it seems like you kind of stayed away from that. And it's, you know, it's not like you have some pretty great friends in the rock world. You do. You just named, you know, Gibbons and Mr. Stapleton in the country world. But man, it seems like Savage is, you know, all about Tim Montana. Was that a conscious decision to not have special guests on the record?
100%. It was one of those things of like, do I call everybody in, or do I make my rock statement about what I do, right? And I think it was a very conscious decision of, hey, if we're going to make this debut rock and put a stake in the ground, let's put a freaking stake in the ground of like, this is me, this is who I am. Chris Shiflett did play on Die Today, so that was the one feature we had. And, you know, I wanted one, like, it was missing a guitar solo, and me and Micah probably could have done it, but I'm like, I want to get someone outside of the box to do it. And Shiflett jumped on there and absolutely crushed it. So that was the only guitar feature. Everything else is me, Micah, and, you know, a drummer. So it was cool. And it was important to me to like do that. And again, like, Michael Wilshire is a producer. I love the fact that he's not a Rick Rubin or this and that. And a lot of people might not know who he is. And I think that's cool because a lot of people are like, who produced it? What studio? Was it RCA Studio B and Giant Enormous Super Producer? And I'm like, no, it was a tool shed in an old cabin in Montana. And me and Michael Wilshire played the guitar, and you've probably never heard of Micah, but you will soon. And, you know, if you watch the Terminal List, he's got the theme song on there. He's always been a TV guy, and he's really good at evoking emotion from songs because he did sync in television for so long. I mean, he wasn't even a country guy forever. He was just TV and movies, and you can capture a certain emotion and energy when you write from that thought of like, all right, what would Rambo be shooting a machine gun to out of a helicopter? Yeah. And so it was, and like I said, when I was like, should we call a session guitar player to play guitar? He'd hand me a guitar and be like, you have your own style. What if they would have had someone else play guitar for Kurt Cobain? It wouldn't sound like Nirvana. And I was like, oh, so I had to kind of break that Nashville mentality of have somebody else do it. And I think we got a unique sound by doing it that way.
That's amazing, man. I love hearing that. And yeah, I had the chance to sit in that tool shed and hear some songs and meet Micah, and, you know, kind of see that world come together is really exciting.
Do some burnouts in an old Chevy.
And we did some burnouts in Tim Montana's old Chevy. That's right, man. If you follow Tim Montana on Instagram, you will see those burnouts every once in a while. Man, I got to say, you mentioned Die Today and Chris Shiflett of the Foo Fighters doing the solo. That's such a powerful track, man. And that came out, a few weeks ago before the album came out. But when it came out, you dedicated it to the special forces and probably, more broadly than that. But what a powerful song about, whatever story it might be coming out of the military, coming out of special forces, but also then to have someone like Chris Shiflett join you on that, or to just not take it to another level, but just add to it. It just makes that song so much more memorable and stands out too on its own.
Yeah. The military tie-in's always been important. We've been able to fortunate to raise over $1 million with my American Thread Sporting Clays shoot. And the 4th of July was pretty wild. I got to tell you, Chuck, about a year ago, I went to the 160th Special Forces compound, the best helicopter pilots in the military. And we played a concert. My sons were there and it was unbelievable. They're flying choppers and blowing up tanks. And it was like, wow, like sensory overload. And I met one of the pilots and his family. And in November, he was killed in the Mediterranean, his entire flight crew. And 2 months after that, I get a message on Facebook from his wife. And I was looking forward to a 4th of July, sitting my butt at the Wise River Club and taking some time off with my kids. And I got a message that said, hey, when Shane was killed, we got his playlist and you were his #1 streamed act. He never stopped talking about you. He was wearing a Big Sky Country Montana hat the day he was killed before he got in his chopper. And what would you charge to play a concert in his backyard for his family and the troops, that his teammates? And I was like, okay, well, there's my 4th of July plans. A, I'm charging you nothing. And B, we're bringing a barbecue truck. So Billy Terrell, who's Dave Grohl's barbecue dude, rolled up there with a barbecue truck. We brought stage and lights. The band showed up and it was a 28-hour drive for me to get there. And I had a buddy team driver with me and I was so burned out when I got there. But when I got out and his dad lost it and started hugging me and showed me Shane's playlist, I mean, this dude was deep cuts, like songs that I forgot I recorded.
Yeah. And
what it meant to those guys. And that was the most meaningful, impactful 4th of July I've ever spent in my life with this family. So
that's incredible, man. I mean, yeah. What was that like, man? I mean, because listen, you do have deep ties to supporting the military and you've done some pretty amazing things over the years, but something like that. And, if you hadn't told me that story, it's not, people wouldn't know it. You're not celebrating it or you're
and I was like, do I post this on social
like
media? I didn't want to post it on social media. I don't mind talking about it, but like, I don't know, that was stuff like that when I'm like overworked and burned out of music. Like they don't know that, they needed that. But I needed that. I really, that like made everything click of like, I can sacrifice one weekend away from my kids. This dude sacrificed every weekend away from his family. And it was just powerful, and getting to see his little kids run around and his mom and dad and his wife. And I'm about to start crying talking about it, but I may have played a backyard for 20 people, but it was the most impactful, powerful concert I've probably ever done. And so shout out to the Barnes family and Shane Barnes.
That's incredible, man. Yeah, I've got goosebumps. I can't imagine. That's something you will never forget, for sure. And something that family will never forget. What an incredible thing.
Yeah. So makes it all worth it right there.
So listen, I know we're having a very serious moment right now, but I have got an incredibly important question. Okay. I'm sorry to just spring it on you, kind of unannounced, but I couldn't forgive myself if I didn't ask. Have you prepped your mom for all the cuss words that are on Savage?
Yes, she's aware, and she already told me she doesn't really like the new music. She's like proud of everything that's happening and seeing me in all the, posts online. And she's like, I just don't really like this new stuff. And she's like, but you remind me of this reminds me of that terrible music you made me listen to when you were a kid. I'm like, are you speaking about Nirvana and Alice in Chains like that? Because I will whip that butt, Mom. And so she's excited, but the new music's not exactly for her. But yeah, we actually did an interview with her yesterday where she went through it, and the guy that interviewed her handed her the first vinyl record I've ever had pressed in my career, and she started tearing up. And she's like,
oh, man.
She's like, this kid would never quit. She's like, I thought he was out of his mind, telling me from the time he was 6 till now, I'm going to be a rock star someday. And she's like, we thought he had mental problems. And now I'm handing her this vinyl. And I'm like, I probably do. If you're in this business long enough, you definitely do.
Yeah. But hey, you're also a rock star. So
yeah.
That's incredible, man. And congrats on your first vinyl. What all the things that you have achieved over the many years. It's cool that, you're still having like these firsts come up.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. And, YouTube put a billboard on Sunset in Doheny. And so that's pretty wild. And it's right near Billy Gibbons' house, but he's not going to be there. And I was like, oh, I was hoping Billy would crash his car into a fire hydrant when he saw it. I had this really big dream of Billy, like, whoa, one of his hot rods.
Tim, I was in LA recently, and I was in a cab, and I caught a glimpse of this billboard, and it looked like it had the symbols of Savage and everything. It had to have been that. That's amazing.
It might have been, yeah. It's pretty wild. So I selfishly might need to try and get on an airplane and just go get a selfie there or something.
Obviously, you have to, man.
Yeah, I remember being 18 and not even affording to have a car and walking down Sunset looking at those billboards with my guitar, and I was broke, had to pawn a couple of my instruments to pay my rent. And I blamed LA for that for the longest time. I was like, I hate LA. It's all LA's fault for years. So I was just young and immature. And then one of the last trips, probably, or actually 2 years ago, that changed. I went to LA. I had dinner with Dave Grohl. I went to Billy Gibbons' house, helped him sort guitars, and we ran into Exhibit and spent a night with Exhibit and Billy Gibbons. And I left LA, and I got upgraded to like a souped up rental car. So I was burning out all over Los Angeles and ripping shitties. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm like, maybe I don't hate LA. I just hated my situation at that time, because this trip, like, LA became awesome.
Yeah.
Exhibit, ZZ Top, and the Foo Fighters in one trip, and I got an upgrade on a rental car. Let's go.
Yeah, and that's how it is every time you go to LA now, probably, right?
It's pretty sweet when I go to LA now. Yeah. When I was 18, it was pretty dark.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, listen, pretty sweet right now. You're coming off a ton of dates with Staind and Seether. You're gearing up for a ton of dates with Bush and Jerry Cantrell. And then it was announced not too long ago, you'll be on the road with Myles Kennedy in early 2025. There's a bit of a break, it seems, in your schedule between Bush and Cantrell and those Myles dates.
Not anymore.
Do you have plans for this fall?
Not anymore. It just filled up by Seether Skillet.
That's right. You know what? I saw the Seether Skillet announcement. I saw you comment and say, maybe I'll catch a show or all of them. And I thought, I wonder.
I feel bad. They're like, you can't say anything. And then I'm trolling all the bands. Like, I don't know, feeling cute. Might check out every show. And then people are like, dude, people know what that means. And I'm like, but do they?
That's amazing, man. Congrats on that. Yeah, you've had what a year, man. It's been jam-packed and nonstop.
Yeah, and I can't wait to have the time off. Can't wait to get on the road, but then like you start counting days to like time with the family. And
yeah,
I'm going to bring my son. It's his 13th birthday, the day we start the Bush, Jerry Cantrell Candlebox tour. And so he's going to come out on the road. He's 13. Sweet. And he's like, hey, Dad, he's wearing his ZZ Top shirt. He's like, who are the dudes we're touring with again? I'm like, you don't ever talk to me like that again. You get in front of that freaking radio and you put on some Alice in Chains, you put on some Bush, some Candlebox, and you report back to Dad. So I wonder, man. I've never met these bands aside from Kevin from Candlebox. I wonder what they're going to think when I roll in with like birthday balloons on day one of my kid. They're either going to be like, who's this guy? Or I think they're all family guys. They'll probably get it.
Yeah, that's probably right, man. Yeah, you'll
hey,
just
Gavin,
be,
nice to meet you. Would you sing happy birthday and get a selfie?
Real quick. I love that, man. Well, yeah, listen, you're definitely staking your flag in the ground for rock and roll, whether it's your live shows, these tours, or the album that just came out today, Savage. I think, man, I've been saying it all year long, listening to Die Today and Savage and Shut Me Out and Devil You Know. Now we've got the album. I think it's going to be one of the best, if not the best, rock records this year. And it's for a lot of different reasons. Every single song for me, Get You Some is the one that just hits me every single time. And there's no question that is 100% rock and roll. Nothing else, man.
Right. When you open a song with Poor White Trash from a Single Wide, Survivor of the Thought of Suicide, I don't think you get away with that in the corporate country world. So again, the creative freedom I get to get therapy from my childhood and say the things that I've wanted to say, like, thanks rock and roll for allowing me to, rock and roll is my counselor, my therapist.
That's right, man. That's right.
So we're really excited. And the Get You Some video comes out, it came out today, Friday. So yeah.
Sweet, man. Awesome. Tim Montana, congrats on the release of Savage, out now, finally today. Go get it, listen to it from start to finish, and then listen to it again. And then make plans to see Tim on the road this year, next year, whenever, wherever you can. We've got all the dates at loudwire.com. You can stay caught up with everything in Tim's world at timmontana.com as well. Tim, you know this, man, but you are welcome anytime. Hopefully we can hang again soon.
You're the best, dude. How's that barbecue?
Oh my God. The listeners, you kind of know this, but I've started getting into grilling and smoking. with a Traeger, and it's all because of Tim. Because Tim, if you follow him on social media, he is the grill master, man. He, just as he talks about taking this concert to that family, he also brought a barbecue truck because that's what he does. And so now I am immersed in this world, and man, it's changed me. Right before the show started tonight, got something on it. I got to go check it in between breaks and everything, but it's what I do now, man.
That brisket looked pretty savage. And there's a funny joke amongst the music industry. If any artists or rock stars see a Traeger backstage, the first question is, do you know a guy named Tim? I just ship Traegers everywhere. I think I've sent Dave Grohl like 3 of them. He's like, dude, stop with the grills on the porch. Chill out.
That's amazing, man. I love it. Tim Montana, congrats on this, man. Thank you for being such a good friend of this show, and I can't wait to see all that's to come this year.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, brother.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.